Welcome to the SaaS AdLab podcast, where we interview fantastic SaaS company founders, CEOs, and entrepreneurs. My name is Luis. I'm the owner and founder of Fantom Agency, a digital marketing agency specializing in scaling SaaS companies. And today we have the pleasure of interviewing Cássio. He's the co-founder of Pli.Pag. And he was kind enough to provide everyone that's listening or watching to this podcast with 50% discount off his subscription model of Pli.Pag. And that's pretty much, they just have to say that they're coming from Fantom, or Fantom would be the code to whoever the sales rep is. And with that being said, thank you so much for joining us today. And why don't you tell us a little bit more about your background?
Hello, guys. Hello, Luis. It's a pleasure to be here and getting to know your community. About my background, I studied computer science, as most of co-founders of startups these days. Had some touch in statistics and finance, and have developed my career around finance and other startups. But that's boring talk.
So essentially, in your product helps solve a huge problem in Brazil at the moment, hopefully expanding to different countries that are facing the same issues. But essentially, one of the biggest problems that you're seeing is that these banks are so centralized that they're able to pretty much control the prices to whatever it is that they want. And there's very little competition to drive those costs low. So anyone that owns a business or anyone that needs to send invoices or take payments is just dealing with crazy high fees, right? And so why don't you talk a little bit more about how Pli.Pag is able to solve that problem for your customers?
Can give you two answers. One is more top down, one is more bottom up. But more top down, to give more context about the problem, is most of the places you go, if you look payments around the world, you have a problem when it comes down to billing. So companies that send an invoice and need to receive that payment later, there's inefficiency there. There's a pain, because there's a distance in terms of invoicing and receiving the money in your bank account. Mm-hmm. That process costs you time, banking fees. You don't have the expertise. This is not your core business. You should not be doing this. Depending on where you are in the world, you suffer more or less. In Brazil, it's a huge pain. What we do is we are a provider of solutions for recurring billings. So our customers, our clients, which we call merchants, they, before using Pli.Pag, they were spending like 2, 3, 4 days in the month just having to deal with this, and this is not their business. They don't know how to do this optimally. They spend money, they spend time, and we created a very simple to use platform that you just subscribe your customer, you put them in a recurrent billing system, and that's it. The system does everything to you. It keeps your default rate low. It increases your revenues. It's as cheap as the banking service, sometimes even less than what the bank charges you. You save time, and that's great experience, which is, frankly, where we work the most, provide the best experience to everyone. And this is essentially what we're doing.
That's great. And as far as growth, and I understand that you have a co-founder that's helping you a lot with that side of the business, right? Essentially, you've only been around for about 1.5 years, I believe you said, and you've had very, very successful growth. And what's been one of the biggest factors to that have helped you get to where you are right now?
Yeah, well, first things first is find a great co-founder. And I can say I'm very, very lucky to have found a great co-founder and taking care of this very sensible part of the business. He manages growth. Everything about growth and is up to him, and I take care of projects and other tasks within the company. But about what we are seeing in growth, what we are still seeing like 30-40% growth every month. But we launched the MVP earlier this year. Last year was just development and all the boring stuff, compliance and contracts and everything. But we really started to test our MVP this year. We didn't start to scale yet. We're concentrating very much on tackling on mistakes, to fail fast, understand the problems, understand if our value proposition is right for our clients, and then we are going to expand.
That's awesome. And now with mentioning the fact that the banks, they're so they're pretty much running their own little business right together, where they're keeping these prices super high, and are you pretty much one of the only companies doing this, or is there other key players in Brazil that are doing something similar? And if so, I guess the main question I'm trying to get to is how low, I would imagine, that churn rate, when you're making a process that used to take days, take 5 minutes, how are you dealing with people churning, and what kind of rates are you seeing when it comes to that?
Well, you may not believe, but churn is zero. Haven't lost any mention, so we don't really know how to measure this because we haven't lost anyone. But as far as I can tell you, more statistical terms, when you don't know, take a number and you put in a formula that's going to probably give you like 2 and 5% if you extrapolate. And average in this market is 15% a year.
Okay.
But we are still understanding because we have such we don't have thousands of clients yet, but with over 100 clients, we have zero churn, so can't take any conclusions yet.
Right. Well, I mean, so far so good though. Haven't seen
probably.
Yeah, that's awesome. And another thing that I wanted to touch on is with having good growth rate, and having to onboard a lot of different clients and such. What's some of the biggest issues that you've dealt with being in a finance industry? I understand that there's a lot of compliance that you have to go through, and making sure that everything is up to par with policies and things like that, and laws and all that. So what are some of the problems that you're looking at when you scale so fast and you haven't had any problems in the past that you have to solve yet?
Yeah, well, when you are in a very lucrative industry, you're able to be successful without being perfect. Like if you own a bank, if you own an oil company, you must be very, very bad entrepreneur to take your company to failure. But in this market, what we see is why not being efficient inside the company, and then using these extra resources we didn't expend to increase our value proposition, to provide a better user experience for everybody, to tackle inefficiencies. That's how I look to it. Not sure if I answered your question.
Yeah, no, definitely. And essentially, what are some of the things that you've, I guess actually I want to ask this question right now. What's the thing that you are most proud of, of so far with growing the company? And this can be a question that is both you and your co-founder. Maybe you've received awards or something like that, but what's been the happiest moment to this point, growing this company?
The happiest moments were, it's unfair to answer that without my co-founder here, but I can probably tell you the moment we processed our first payment, the moment we brought our first real client, our first merchant, and when we reach our first million.
That's
Those
awesome.
were the happiest moments.
And one thing that we talked about earlier was, some of your background, and being such an entrepreneurial mindset from a very young age. And how do you think this has impacted, where you're at now? Do you think if you didn't know some of the things that made you, that you learned from the very beginning, like being consistent, being persistent about specific actions, do you think anything would have been different at all?
Not sure, but I can tell you, not here alone, right? So I really don't like when we attribute the success of a company to one person. We are a team, so I think the very most important thing is build a team, find the right people, and those people will build the company for you. And in that specific thing, I can tell you, I and my partner, we are very lucky to have him as a co-founder, and we as a team as a whole, because we have excellent people. We have a very small team, and that small team is able to deliver high results, and to be way above the average. And when we bring those experiences, like for instance, my partner, he has worked like several companies, very different experience, like big companies, startups, small companies, me too. He has like international experience, and so do I. So when you bring all these things together, they sum up to something. You start to see some synergy, and you build a larger thing than the sum of the individual things.
Mm-hmm. And
that's how I see.
So now going off the fact that you do have a co-founder, and obviously both of you together have been able to grow this wonderful company, what is the one thing that a co-founder, your partner, whatever you want to call it, your business partner, your co-founder, what is the one thing that they have to be able to take care of essentially? Does it have to be something that complements you, something that supplements you, or where do you find that right synergy to make this work? Because a lot of the times, you have two people at the very top of the company, and they spend a lot of time arguing with each other because they're not on the same page, right? So
yes.
it's either going to make or break the company. And what is it that is the main factor that you find, or that maybe you haven't had an experience where you've had an issue with the co-founder, but if you could think of something that has been the reason why this has been successful working together, what would that be?
Good question. I can give you very straight answers. I think first thing is ethics. Even though if you are starting a company with someone that doesn't have ethics, but they have everything else, don't start. Second thing is, me and him, we are very intellectually honest with other. Like, if I for one reason spend the day sleeping and haven't been present in the company, didn't happen, but if one day happen, I'll tell him, look, I spent the day sleeping, I didn't go to hospital, and probably tomorrow I'm going to work like 30 days, I can't in a day, but I'm going to work like 20 hours tomorrow.
Are you gonna make up for it?
Yeah, excuse me, etc., etc. But we are very honest with each other. So if we do one thing, especially wrong things, then we try to solve those problems as soon as possible. Don't leave. Don't let the problems grow, because they will come for you. And also find alignment with the people that are with you. You can't build anything alone, right? So you need to find people, but also you want to build association. Like you don't want to have like 10 co-founders, right? So there's a magic number, and the right number is, you should find out what the right number is for you. For this company, we found out to be something around 2 or 3. We're now in 2 co-founders. And for this number, we say, look, what are we good at? So you're good at growing. If you give me a Rolex and ask me to sell for $50, I probably won't. I'm horrible salesman. Yeah. I don't know anything about it. So he's the guy to do this. He's the guy to take care of all these things. So I come to him and say, look, the only thing I can do is I trust you, and you should trust me on the things I will do. I'm good at building projects, and let me have a try on these other ideas. If I'm not good, we'll find someone else, or you can take this part of the company to work. But being honest about who you are, what you can really deliver, and having specific roles for each thing, for each person is key. So here we say, look, we separate our personas in 3 parts. So we are shareholders, we are co-founders, and we are executives. The only thing over time we will always be co-founders. We may leave the company, we may sell the company, we may have shares but not be executives. But try to look at those things, and building the company, bear in mind that you want the best for the company, and the company pays you back when you're doing this.
Mm-hmm. That's
long response.
What's that?
Long response.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And so, with that being said, how this is actually a question that I haven't asked anyone on the podcast, and I want to see what you think about this, because of what you said. No one has mentioned stepping out of the company, becoming a non-shareholder or a non-executive, just being a co-founder. So I want to hear your take on it. Essentially, how important is it? And this is, for really early stage companies, as well as for companies that have been around for a while. Excuse me. So how important is it what do you think actually about becoming emotionally attached to the business? Obviously this is, it's hard. And it takes a lot of work to build a company. Obviously, you're probably maybe sleeping at the office, trying to get a project done and so on. And you definitely build some sort of emotional, feelings, however weird that may sound, but it happens, whenever you stop doing something that you love and you love the company, something's missing. So what do you think about becoming emotionally attached to, whether it's this company or any other company that you start building and you start seeing success?
Good question. Very good question. I see it as a life cycle, but seeing it as a life cycle, as everything in life has a beginning and an end, we can't really start to think about how it's going to end, when we are going to exit. I honestly and very personally, I think it's a loser's way of seeing, to start a company and think to sell it right away the moment you're founding the company. Mm-hmm. I haven't seen anyone building a successful company with that specific goal in mind. When you start a company, You start a company thinking to grow it, and probably you're going to be there. You may not be there, but that doesn't matter. You start something bigger,
Mm-hmm.
bigger than you, and this is pretty much the spirit. And I would look pretty much more as a marriage than something to sell, but but just like one ends, the other also ends, and um, but until that doesn't happen, you are working to grow it. That's the way I see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great point. I think I'm definitely on board with you with what you said. Essentially, I think growing a company, you shouldn't be so much focused on the future of it, essentially the revenue, right? But as much as you should be focused on actually making someone's life easier and actually solving a problem for
Yeah.
people, right? So like you're making lives a lot easier in Brazil to a lot of different business owners down there where they're dealing with all these things that they can't take care of because they don't have the power to do so because the banks are so restrictive, that they take power and time away from them and resources to very, very hard earned resources. And what you're doing is just helping them, keep more of the money, keep more of the time that they have. And essentially that's the best resource that we have. And it's also the most scarce resource. And, I think solving problems from the bottom is really what's important here with growing startups and companies, and really finding something that's going to make life easier for not just yourself as a business owner. And it's not going to be easy for yourself. Growing companies is extremely difficult, right? But essentially just helping people out. And you can take this to pretty much any successful company that's out there. Whether it's Amazon, you take a look at Jeff Bezos. I don't think he ever thought of the fact that he'd be, one of the biggest companies on the world, when he started selling books out of his garage. And same thing with a lot of different big companies. So I love what you brought up, and the marriage part, that was funny. But essentially, I
Yeah, it's,
totally,
it's much more about commitment.
yeah, absolutely. And
It's much more about commitment, and much less like you marry someone thinking about how this is going to end. No, you're married for life, right? Otherwise, you shouldn't marry.
exactly, that's great. And so what I'd love to hear this from you. And what are some of the best books you've read? Is that actually, what's the best book that you would recommend to anyone that is either looking to start a startup or is currently in one, and could use a good read?
Good. I didn't finish this book, but I believe to the point that I have it is 0 to 1 from Peter Thiel.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and he has different philosophy than most of accelerators are applying around the world, where he gives two very very good contributions in thought. Um, the first and less important, I would say, is give time more business than most of accelerators are doing around. Um, Not sure if this is in the book, but the most important part of the book is we live in an exponential world. We live under the power law.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do understand this, then you start looking to things in a different way. And this is the way changed the way I see things. I always try to look in a less linear way, and try to apply this way of thinking. I haven't read much of Peter Thiel recently, but I like his philosophy.
Uh-huh. I'm pretty sure, I don't know if I have it here. I actually have the book sitting right here on my bookshelf, and I haven't gone to it. I hear a ton of books, and usually I get them before having the opportunity to read them because I want to make sure that I get them. But I have it. It's right up there. I'm looking at it right now. So I'm actually going to
Good.
start.
Well,
Go ahead.
before reading this, there was one company he was in, which was PayPal, and there's a book called PayPal Wars, about the wars when they were bootstrapping the company, and before they find the hook with eBay, and that's awesome book.
Okay.
Have that in mind and read 0 to 1. Very good readings.
Okay. I'll definitely check that out. And what's been one of the most challenging things that you've faced, being a co-founder?
The most challenging, calculating, understanding, and taking risks. And this is a way I when I do most of the things, not only in our business, but I try to have the risks spectacles. So I wear those risk eyes to see how things are from that perspective. And when you see, from my perspective, that at least when I have that in mind, there are a few things that I said, look, I think this is way too risky, or with probably losing time. And even if we're not losing time, this is way too risky. But having to, from one end, taking no risk, and you do nothing, and taking all the risks and breaking the company. Where are you? Where to gauge, right? Where to put the ruler?
Mm-hmm.
This is difficult, and when you find your threshold, and sometimes when you're less comfortable having to move this towards a more risk approach, this is sometimes harder for me, especially if the risk is not optimal. Like you're taking a lot of risk and the reward is not good enough. So, okay, for instance, I'll provide some ideas like not raising capital and taking and borrowing money. This is risky. Putting merchants in not having the proper due diligence. This is too risky. Cannot do this. Things like this, right? Quitting the job, of course, is risky. Things like this.
Okay, great. And with that, we're getting kind of close here to the 30 minutes. So what is the one thing that you want to accomplish that not that you want to accomplish, overall, but what's the one thing that you're currently working on for Pli.Pag?
1 million happy customers.
1 million happy customers. And how are you going to do that?
Next year.
Okay. I'm gonna check back. I'm gonna check back with you, and we'll have a conversation then.
Yeah, we will do.
Awesome.
But I believe when you're providing real value, like serving a real pain, and when you see that you improve people's lives, that's probably, I would say, your job is done here.
Yeah, and I mean, that's definitely one of the things that you're doing, right? So far, no churn. Hopefully we keep it that way.
Yeah.
And
as you're saying.
What do you have any other questions do you have any questions for me?
I actually have. What did you study? I was wondering.
I studied business and marketing.
Business and marketing. All right. Business and marketing. I knew you were not computer science. Computer sciences don't hardly look other people's in the eye. This is one thing I have learned, because how do you find if a computer scientist is very good, well, he's probably not looking at your all stars. He's probably looking to the floor, even lower.
That's funny. I didn't.
Yeah, like introvert. You know, the best ones are probably, I would say, the, from my perspective, the best ones I have met are introverts. So, but that's not the rule. Like we have exceptions.
There's always going to be exceptions, but that's, there's definitely a place for I guess I don't want to use the word, but stereotypes, and a lot
Yeah,
of
no.
a lot of the times they're true. So that's a good question. Yeah, that's what I studied, and I've always had a very entrepreneurial spirit. So I love helping people. I love learning, about SaaS companies. That's, for some reason, it became my passion, and just anything that entrepreneurs that have to bootstrap things and then really understand, solve problems, but more so like in a tech kind of world. I just love it. And so it's always a pleasure, interviewing people like you, Cássio, on the podcast. And even though this is extremely recent and new, I feel like I feel like now I have pretty much friends all over the world. And then we're only on episode, I want to say 10. I'm not entirely sure which one this is at this point, but yeah, it's always great interviewing people like you and learning more about what you have to offer to the world and how you're changing, ecosystems and really helping people with their businesses, with their lives, and just making the world a better place. So again, thank you so much for being on the podcast. And where can people find you online? Are you on Twitter, Instagram, or anything like that?
Yeah, of course. Well, you can find me. Well, first things first. Our website is Pli.Pag.com.br, Pli.Pag.com.br, and I don't use much Twitter, but I use LinkedIn. Not the best social network, but you can find me out in Cássio, and my name is huge. It's called Pagnoncelli, Pagnoncellii. Find me there.
I'll make sure I put.
Yeah. And that's it.
Awesome. So thank you everyone for listening. You can find me on Instagram and pretty much LinkedIn, and also Facebook. On Instagram, it's CAMACHO.FTM, and then Fantom.agency. So check that out. Follow me if you want to, see what I'm up to or whatever. And if you're a SaaS company founder, a co-founder, or anything of the sort, make sure you join the group. We try to help people with any questions that they have regarding marketing and advertising for their SaaS company to scale. So go ahead and join that. And if you're interested in being on the podcast, let me know, and we'll make sure we get something booked here. And thank you again, Cássio, for being on the podcast. And I challenge every one of you to go out there and do something that makes you, just light up and want to help people around. So thank you again for taking the time of your day. I know it's late for you, and we'll keep in touch.
Thank you, Luis. Let's keep in touch. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.